Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the debut record from Ephemerald, Between the Glimpses of Hope, out February 19th on Inverse Records. The album has 9 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and these guys are a symphonic death metal band from Finland. Now I've been patiently waiting for this album since I heard their first ever single, Till the Sea Swallow Us Whole. So it's been a long time, but the wait is over. Let's get right into it. I want to start off by talking about the structure because I feel like touching on the structure, you get a feel for what the whole album is about. And this is an album that's divided into side A and side B. The great thing about it is that both sides are equally strong. There's no dip from what you get in the first half of the record to what you're going to get in the second half. All the elements are there. The strength, the sound, the aggression, the volume stays untouched, unhinged from the first half to the second half. In the middle, you have a song called All There Is, a balladesque style song that really starts off very mellow, very melancholic, and it gains volume as it progresses, which is the perfect leadway into the second half of the record. So it creates the perfect segue, but at the same time creating the perfect break that really allows you to just take a step away and listen to something different. Listen to something that you haven't heard up until this point and you will not hear from this point forward. You need a song like this on a record that has this sort of intensity, that has this sort of soundscape. If you don't have a song that resets the perception of the listener, it's going to be very hard for the listener to be able to tell the forest from the trees. All the songs start to feel like they're merging into one another. The elements are pretty much the same across every single track. So it becomes an album that doesn't allow itself to be as fluid, as dynamic as it can be. So having a song like this that changes your perception, changes your feel, it changes how you perceive the overall fluidity of the album is extremely important in order to make this record as engaging as possible from the first to the last song. Once you get into the soundscape, this is an album that's rich and sound. It has a lot of volume. It really comes at you with a lot of presence, with a lot of intensity, with a lot of aggression at times, but also melodic and melancholic. It really merges a lot of different feelings. It merges a lot of different emotions into how it's created. The symphonic elements of the soundscape do not give you this cinematic vibe. You don't feel like you're watching a movie, which is normally something that you get from symphonic death metal bands. Here you get a much different soundscape or a much different atmosphere. There's a lot more melancholy in it, which is also something that you get out of Finnish bands. So there's a little bit of their Finnish DNA in their sound and how this album is put together from a soundscape perspective, but also how the symphonic elements impact that same soundscape. I would have liked to see the overall sound a little bit better defined. That's to me one of the key issues that I had with the overall experience, was that sometimes you can't see the breaks, you can't see the definition where one ends and where the other element starts, because they're just really well blended together. I would have liked to see some more of a path, perhaps a more linear path for each of the elements so that you can digest them individually, but then also digest them as a group. And I didn't feel like that was present on this record. Everything is just kind of blended in together and working in unison, but working not just side by side, but working almost on top of each other in order to create that big sound, that big volume. So perhaps a little bit of better definition would have helped the overall experience. Within the sound, we also have to talk about the drums and guitars. The drums is one of my favorite pieces or elements of this album because it's very consistent from the beginning all the way to the end. You get a lot of heaviness, a lot of strength, power, really creating the foundation, the pillars for this album. They don't deviate that much. It doesn't matter what song it is, it doesn't matter what the atmosphere of the track is. The drums always stay very consistent in terms of how they sound and in terms of what they have to offer to the album. So I like that consistency. It's important. You need to create that foundation that allows the symphonic elements to be a little bit more broad, and then the guitars to come on top of it and drive a little bit of the sound and create some changes, some nuances that give you a different perspective from track to track. And that's exactly what you're going to get out of the guitars. You're not going to get the same one-size-fits-all as you're getting from the drums. The drums are very consistent from that perspective. The guitars offer you different looks, different feels. Sometimes they drive the tracks, sometimes they're more melodic, sometimes they tag up with the drums becoming a little bit more heavy, creating a little bit more substance for how this album comes across. So you're going to get different looks and different feels depending on what the song calls for, depending on what they wanted to bring to the forefront on a specific track. So I love the diversity of sound that's coming from the guitars. It's consistent in the quality, but it's not consistent in the approach, and that's perfectly fine. The drums are holding everything together. The guitars could be as diverse as you want. Last but not least, we have to talk about the vocals. I really feel like there's an issue with the vocals on this record overall. I didn't feel like they were consistent in terms of how they come across. In some tracks, they're a little bit more in the forefront as far as the mix is concerned, and some tracks, they're a little bit more hidden within the mix. I honestly don't feel like there's an issue with the vocals in general. It's more of how they were put together, how they were recorded and mixed within the tracks. I would like to see a little bit more consistency from that perspective. And when you have an album that has this much volume, and that volume is really not well defined across all the elements, you need the vocals to be slightly more in the forefront, almost being the drivers of the experience of the record. And I felt that most of the times on this album was either the symphonic elements driving the experience or the guitars. I never really felt like the vocals were in charge. They were just kind of coming along for the ride. Having said that, I enjoyed the dynamic changes, I enjoy the clean vocals, I enjoy the harsh vocals. Some of the choirs are absolutely magnificent. So there's a lot of beauty, there's a lot of interesting dynamics, interesting changes as far as the overall vocal tracks are concerned. Like I said, I would just like to see them a little bit more in the forefront. Overall, I really enjoy this album. This is a debut record. We have to keep that in mind. These guys have a lot of experience with previous bands, but this is still a debut record. It definitely shows how much knowledge, the tools, the quality, the ability that they have is definitely present on this album. But it leaves you wondering what they can do next. I really feel like sky's the limit for this band. Like I said, they have all the tools, they have all the knowledge. You just need to craft the way they construct the record perhaps slightly better defined. But learning from this experience, learning from this record, and moving forward is going to be key for them. Overall, this is a magnificent debut album that has a lot of strength, that has a lot of power, that has a lot of volume. And within the symphonic death metal genre, this is an album that will be impactful for the fans of the genre, and definitely for the fans of the band that have been waiting for this record for a very long time. Now, as far as songs are concerned, I want to start off with Grand Creation. This is the opening track on the record, one of my favorite songs on this album. I love the heaviness of the drums. That is the backdrop of this song, and it stays consistent from the beginning all the way to the end. The melody of the guitars becomes more of the driver of the sound, becomes more of the driver of the experience, but it switches between melody and heaviness. The guitars on this track don't stay very consistent throughout. They really give you the ebbs and flows that you need. While the drums have this perfect bass line, very linear, the guitars are going up and down, giving you these changes, keeping you moving, keeping you engaged as the listener, as it needs to be. Mixing in some of the symphonic elements allows the sound to be better overall balanced. This is a track that has a lot of volume, but perhaps one of the tracks that's better defined as far as the roles of each and every single element on the track itself. I really like the overall experience. I like the overall sound. The vocals are also very dynamic. The same dynamic changes that are happening with the guitars, they're also happening with the vocals, using harsh vocals, clean vocals, giving you a little bit of both, giving you a little bit of a glimpse of what this record is going to have in store. From that perspective, this is the perfect opening track because it really showcases everything that this album is going to have throughout the other 8 songs. So it's a little bit of the Coles Notes, if you will, right at the beginning of the album. Next is Lost. This song has a very long, atmospheric, symphonic intro. It just feels like it goes on for days. You almost get lost in it, but it works extremely well because overall this song becomes more about the atmosphere of its sound than about anything else, than about the lyrics, than about the vocals, than just everything else becomes secondary. It really becomes about the atmosphere, it really becomes about the experience, and the experience starts with that intro, bleeds into the song, and then it continues from that point on. It allows the track to have a lot of momentum. It allows the song to really balance heaviness and melody. It's a track that always tries to find that perfect ground, that perfect line to walk between those two worlds. And in my opinion, it really does find it because you're able to feel the heaviness that the track has almost nearly from the beginning once that intro is over to the end, but at the same time you still feel the melody that it holds at every single turn, is always moving, is always shifting, is always changing, but at the same time staying consistent in terms of what gives you heaviness and what gives you melody. Last but not least, Reborn. This is a beautiful track filled with melancholy and melody. Those are the two main emotions, if you will, that you're going to get out of the soundscape of this track. Using clean vocals really added to that melancholic aspect. It really brought a different atmosphere to the way the track comes across. Once the harsh vocals kick in, it brings the mood down. It really gains weight. It doesn't make the song necessarily heavier, but it gains weight. The volume feels a lot more robust. It feels like it becomes a little bit thicker, and that brings the mood, it brings the presence of the track all the way down. One of my favorite songs on the album, one of my favorite solos. The solo on this track is magnificent. It really captures the essence of the track. It really captures how the song feels, and it extends the track. It feels so organic. This solo feels like it belongs there. You couldn't think of a different solo to put on this track. When you listen to this track and you listen to this solo, they go hand in hand. It's a perfect marriage, it's a perfect fit, and it makes the song even bigger, even better. This is it. This is Ephemerald with Between the Glimpses of Hope, out February 19th on Inverse Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.